Hi guys, welcome back to Easy Pro. I hope you guys are having an amazing Christmas. This will be the last tutorial for the year, and I'm sure your graphic designing skills have improved greatly, especially if you followed my tutorials from the very beginning. Without further delay, let's proceed with the business of the day. Today, we will discuss two more advanced CorelDRAW tools, and these are the Transparency tool and the Eyedropper tool. We start with the Transparency tool, and it is used to partially reveal image areas underneath the object. Let's draw an object to understand how to use this tool. We can now select the Transparency tool. To use the Transparency tool, you select the object, then up here we have Uniform Transparency, and this applies a regular, evenly distributed transparency. Here we can adjust the color transparency. Higher values make the color more transparent and lower values makes the color more opaque. So you can adjust the color transparency to your preference. Or you can come down here to adjust the transparency. Let's now take a look at some transparency properties. Here we have Transparency Picker, and this chooses a preset transparency. Here we have All, and this applies the transparency to both the object fill and the object outline. Next we have Fill, and this applies the transparency only to the object fill. And here we have Outline, and this applies the transparency only to the object outline. So here we have Merge Mode, and this chooses how the color of transparency blends with the color of the underlying object. By default we have Normal Mode, and we can choose different other modes which have unique effects. Let's move on to another type of transparency. Here we have Fountain Transparency, and this applies a gradient of varying opacity. As you can see, one side of the object is more transparent than the other, and we can adjust the transparency to our preference. You can also use the opacity slider to adjust the color transparency. So under Fountain Transparency, we have Linear Fountain Transparency, we have the Elliptical Fountain Transparency, we have the Conical Fountain Transparency, and the Rectangular Fountain Transparency. Here we can specify the transparency of the selected node. So if we were to click on a particular node, we can adjust its transparency, or just come down here to adjust the transparency. Now, a faster way to apply the fountain transparency is by clicking and dragging on the selected object. Other types of transparency include the vector pattern transparency, the bitmap pattern transparency, the two color pattern transparency, and the texture transparency. To edit the properties of the transparency, you can come up here to edit transparency. Here we have options like the merge mode, the type of transparency, its arrangement, transparency target, the number of steps and acceleration you want the transparency to have, the blend direction, and so on. And if you no longer need the transparency effect, simply come up here and choose no transparency. Let's draw another object overlapping the current object and see how the transparency affects both objects. We notice that part of the bottom object is revealed and the top object has a different feel when placed on the bottom object. As you can see, this part of the object looks orange while this part looks yellow, and the colors of both objects determine the color of the overlapping area. The transparency tool can also be used in images, mostly to merge backgrounds together. Let's import an image. Let's now draw an object and power clip the image inside. Let's edit the content of the power clip. We now apply fountain transparency to the image. Next, we duplicate the image and mirror it horizontally. As you can see, it seems like we have just one image, but we are able to blend the two images together using the transparency tool. You can also give the object a unique feel. Let's look at a situation where the image has a sharp edge and we would like to fade it out. So we select the transparency tool and apply fountain transparency. And if both edges of the image are sharp and we would like to fade it out, we follow the same process. Next, we convert the image to a bitmap. Then we apply fountain transparency to the other edge. Let's move on to the eyedropper tool. We have two eyedropper tools, and these are the color eyedropper tool and the attribute eyedropper tool. The color eyedropper tool samples colors and applies them to objects. Let's draw objects to understand how to use this tool. Let's now select the color eyedropper tool, and it is directly below the transparency tool. To use this tool, place the eyedropper on a colored image or object to sample a particular color that you need. Then you click on it, and the eyedropper automatically switches to a fill icon. And when we move out of the object, we notice a no symbol, and this implies that we need to fill an object. So when we place the fill icon in the circle, we notice that the no symbol changes to the color that we sampled earlier. So simply click on the object to fill it. So up here we have selected color, where the sampled color is previewed. And here we have applied color, where we apply the selected color to an object. Here we have select from desktop, and we can sample a color from outside the application. We can also sample the color of a single pixel, a 2x2 pixel, and a 5x5 pixel area. Let's move on to the second eyedropper tool, which is the attribute eyedropper tool. And this copies attributes such as fill, outline, size, and effect, and applies them to the other object. So let's select the attribute eyedropper tool. To use this tool, we click on the target object, and when it switches to the fill icon, we click on the reference object, and this copies the fill and outline of the target object to the reference object. So up here we have properties, and we can choose which object properties to sample. So we can choose to sample the outline, fill, and text. Next, we have transformations, and you can choose which object transformations to sample. You can sample the size, rotation, or position. And lastly, we have effects, and you can choose which object effects to sample. So guys, that will be all for this tutorial and this amazing year. Thanks for your support and your time, and enjoy the rest of your holidays.